On each episode of the Podcast Interview Marketing Show, we're going to start with one big idea. And this week, it's a foundational idea. What is podcast interview marketing? You see, it's a new category. It's a new marketing channel. And as you listen to this, I would encourage you to ask yourself, are the assumptions that they're saying true? Are they true in your business? And ask yourself also, how could I use this to grow my brand and grow my business? At the end of every interview, I'll be back with 3 ways that you can take this information and turn it into action. So without further ado, let me pass it over to Jessica Morgan, our operations manager in Texas.
Hi, Tom. Well, I'm excited to dig in today and really get to learn more about podcast interview marketing. So, first off, I know you share this with the team all the time, but can you share the story behind the term of podcast interview marketing?
Yeah, it started out really early on, 2016. We've been in business for about a year, and I'll never forget it. It was just before Christmas, and talking with Christopher Lockhead. And Christopher's been a client, a good friend of the company, and a great mentor. And we're talking, and he found us because he was trying to promote the book Play Bigger, which is all about category design. And we got to the end of the conversation and he goes, "It sounds to me like you have a new category here." And I still remember telling him, I'm like, "No, it's a little bit of marketing, it's a little bit of PR, it's a little bit of, inbound marketing." And he paused and he said, "Why don't you see this as a new category?" And I said, "Well, I'd rather not have to re-educate the entire industry, right? Everybody knows what marketing is, everybody knows what inbound is, everybody knows what PR is." And Christopher paused and he says, "You need to evangelize this, you need to own it, you need to bring it to the world because no one else will." And I paused and I said, "Well, let me read your book." And I called him back like 72 hours later after listening to his book twice. And I'm like, he is really onto something here. It's not podcast interview marketing is not just a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's something different, right? And it's something that the world really needs, in this AI world where we're all getting bombarded by marketing that's just becomes an annoyance. Podcast interview marketing, I really believe, is what relationship sales really needs.
Absolutely. It is so different and so needed. So, how would you define podcast interview marketing?
Yeah, and you know me, I'll give you a long answer to a short question. I'd go back to the first one is like, well, why? Why do we even need podcast interview marketing, right? And I think the fundamental problem that it solves is obscurity, right? Obscurity, I believe, is every company's biggest problem, right? I don't care if you're on version 1.0 or 20.0. Right now, your product or service is perfect for someone, right? The problem that they don't buy from you is that we don't buy from the best. We buy from the best we know of. So more than ever now, we've got this large potential customer base, but if they don't know about us, it doesn't make any difference. So there's that first thing of obscurity, right? And then people will say, well, if you don't want to be obscure, all you have to do is, buy lots of lists, do lots of content, do lots of SEO. And I think more and more people are looking for real human connection and they want authenticity, right? And especially on larger sales, more relationship sales, more B2B sales, that's important. So this idea of how can you break through that obscurity? How can you have a human connection? And then also, how can you do it profitably, right? And right now there's this paradox that I see in marketing where people are telling you more or better, right? And it's like, you need more leads, do more content, do more emails. And what it does is it gives you a lot of volume, right? but it doesn't convert well. As one of our past clients, Gail Moody Bird, she worked with us when she was with a previous company. Now she is the CMO for LinkedIn Sales Navigator. And I love how she says we're getting more efficient at things that are getting less effective. So all of these things that we're talking about, marketing with more, 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 we're getting more, but they're not converting, right? So then you got the flip side, and it's like better. And people know that if they jump on a plane and they go across the country and they speak to 20 people at a conference, right? They'll be able to convert them. It is very effective. The problem is it's not very efficient, right? The cost of sales goes through the roof. So now you need something that's both efficient and effective. And that's really what podcast interview marketing is. You have the efficiency of being able to speak from your home, from your office to thousands, tens of thousands of ideal customers wherever they are, really throughout time. So you've got that efficiency, but now you've got the effectiveness of the conversation, right? After somebody hears you for 30 or 45 minutes, whether it's on a digital stage or a physical stage, the conversion rate is so, so much higher. So when I talk about podcast interview marketing, what is it? Well, it's not just getting on a random podcast. It's really a system so that you get on the right podcasts, that you are there for a reason, and a system to move people from being just a passive listener to an active visitor to an engaged lead, right? Podcast interview marketing is all about using other people's established audience to get that know, like, and trust to drive sales, right? It's not about just PR and, well, I want to get famous. No, that's not helping the guest. It's not helping the host. It's not helping the audience. You bring value and you get value back on that. So that's a long answer to a short question of what podcast interview marketing is.
That's perfect. So people listening right now may be saying, wow, Tom, this sounds so new and revolutionary. Is that how you would consider it?
I think when people say this is new and revolutionary, they don't have as much gray hair as I do, right? Because there's nothing new under the sun, right? Everything you can look back and say, oh, yeah, this is the same way we did it before, and this is why it works, and this is why it'll work in the future. So if you think back, 50 years ago, how did you grow your business? Well, you tapped into other people's audiences, right? And that could be going to the local chamber of commerce. It could be speaking at the Rotary, right? Get in on the conversation people are already listening to, right? Then it could be being on television, right? A larger audience, right? But still, it's a focused audience, right? Get that know, like, and trust. Then, after sort of Y2K, it was guest blogging. And that's really where I stumbled on this idea, right? My last company, we built it up from a regional player to a national leader, sold it off, and we did all of that through guest blogging, right? Write a blog, put it up on somebody else's site, right? Because you put it on your own site, you know, you're going to read it. Maybe your spouse will read it, and maybe your mom will read it, right? You want to be where people are seeing you. So back in those days, which was probably 15, 20 years ago, put a guest blog up there. Get that know, like, and trust. Get the SEO value. Get the keywords, everything that goes along with that. And then you move them from being, just knowing about you to bringing them back to your site and then being a lead and a customer. So, come, probably 2014 or so, after I had sold my last company, some people asked me, how do you grow your business? And I told them about guest blogs, but it doesn't work anymore. So that's when I hypothesized that you could use targeted podcast interviews the same way we used guest blogging, the same way we used TV, the same way we used the Rotary Club, right? To get that know, like, and trust. We tested it. It worked great. A lot of people would say, what's a podcast? And then about 2019, it really started to take off. So there's nothing revolutionary about it. It's evolutionary, right? If somebody said this is guest blogging on podcasts, I'd be like, yeah, this is this is like talking to the Rotary Club, but being able to do it from your home, from your office, and being able to talk to them not just in your city, but throughout the world and throughout time, because this is evergreen content. It'll be around for a long time.
Absolutely. So you always say people either turn you up or turn you off. And I know right now people have turned you up because this is very intriguing. So does it work? Does podcast interview marketing work for everyone, for every company?
If if somebody says it works for everyone, they're either lying to themselves or lying to you, right? Nothing is universal, right? One size fits all means one size fits none, right? So looking at that, there's some things that you have to look at, right? Podcast interview marketing. The first one is it a relationship sale, right? If I'm buying a service that is going to impact my business, it's going to impact my life. Um, you know, I better know who the people are. Get that know, like, and trust, right? If I'm buying um, the wired earbuds, to me that's a disposable product. I buy them every 2 weeks. I put them through the washer. I don't care who they come from. It's not that important. But if it's a relationship sale, I need to know who that person is. So that would be the first thing. It's the size of the sale, the relationship, how much that personality matches in there. The next one is it have a regional, a national, or global audience, right? The bigger the audience from a geography standpoint, the easier it is to get them. And I have a friend here in Kalamazoo that has so many times asked me, "How can I use podcast interviews?" Because he knows that's what I do, and I'm like, "You can't, right?" He's got a great business. They install um, they install home stereo systems. But if you're not within 10 miles of here, you're probably not his customer. Makes no sense to put out word to the entire globe if all of a sudden, it's really local on there. And so those are the big things, right? Is it a relationship sale? Is it a regional or global or national basis? Those are the big things. And then the other thing too is it a high enough ticket item that it's going to take a discussion, right? We've done nonfiction books for a long, long time, and we stopped doing fiction books because, you know, I don't have to know who the author is, who the backstory is, if I'm just buying a fiction book or a book for my kids, or grandkids, for $5. It's more of a transaction than a relationship.
Absolutely. So you often say other people's audience is more valuable than other people's money. Can you explain that?
Well, I started saying that when interest rates were like at 2 and 3%, right? And it made a whole lot more sense back then. But even now, and I'm not going to date this by saying what the current interest rate is, even with much, much higher interest rates, I still believe it. And let me give you an example on this. And I'll also show my age on this. What if Oprah came to me and said, "Tom, I love what you and the team are doing at Interview Valet, right? I would love to give you $1 million interest free, right? I'll give it to you. You can pay me back whenever you want." Or what if she just said, "I'll give you $1 million. I don't want equity in your business or anything. I believe in what you're doing to make the world a better place, to take marketing to the next level. Here's $1 million. Or you can be on my show." I know which one I would choose, right? I would take her audience over her money. And you look at somebody like, uh, I can't think of Sarah Blakely from Spanx, right? That's how she built her entire business. She got on the Oprah show. She got that know, like, and trust. She got the transfer of authority from, if Oprah says she's good, she must be good. And that blew up her entire business. And that's the same thing we're doing on podcast interviews, right? When I'm a guest, nobody, okay, okay, maybe my mom and my bride will listen to the podcast just because I'm on it. But the vast majority of people are logging in because they know this is the host. Now, if the host brings you on, they've already like vouched for you, right? They've vetted you. It's like if you're on their show, you are, your quality. So you've gotten through that first hurdle almost. And it's interesting, Rand Fishkin today talks about that the best way to sell something is not to sell anything, right? But to earn the respect, awareness, and trust of those ready to buy. And it's funny, most people are like, those who could buy. And he's like, no, why do you want to like sell people and try to move them along, right? There's enough people that listen to you and they're like, heck yes, this is answer to prayer, right? And that's why in podcast interviews, you see the sales cycle is so much faster. It closes at a higher rate, at a higher average sale price and less churn, right? It's not just cold leads, it's hot traffic. Like you said, when people hear you for a half hour, they turn you up or turn you off. And either one is okay. You don't want to attract everyone. You just want to attract your ideal customer. And the other people, well, you can repel them because there's somebody else that'll serve them a whole lot better.
So, right now, a lot of people might be saying, well, I've tried podcast guesting, it doesn't work. What do you have to say to that?
We're not talking about podcast guesting here. We're talking about podcast interview marketing, right? And when I hear this, and I hear it a lot, right? Um, there's a lot of people out there doing podcast guesting, and to me, that's like a tactic. It's like saying, "Well, I've gone fishing before, and it didn't work. Fishing is stupid. It doesn't work." Well, there's some people that get great results for fishing. And you just start looking and say, were you doing it the right way? Right? Were you using the right bait? Were you going to the right places? Right? If you want to catch sharks, don't go to the Great Lakes, right? And as I look at some people, they'll do podcast guesting and they've got no criteria, right? They're just like any show's a good show, right? I'll talk about anything. And to me, that's almost like fishing and going, I know fish are in water. Look, there's a swimming pool. I'm going to go fishing there. And then it doesn't work. So I think too many people are doing just random podcast guesting without a strategy, without a marketing strategy behind it. And I think even worse than that, I think if people are honest, a lot of them are doing also podcast guessing. And I'd even say there's agencies out there that are doing podcast guessing because 9 years ago when we started, there wasn't a whole lot of data, right? It was more guessing. Now, as time has gone on, the data's gotten better. And people are like, well, you can't get the data. Well, you can't get it for free, right? You have to license those databases. And we spend, well, we spend way, way too much money every month because, one of our core values is in God we trust, everyone else bring the data. So we license probably a dozen different databases, and each one of them tells us a different piece in the puzzle, right? And so that we have that data. So you've got the data. Now you need a strategy with it, right? It's not just podcast guesting. Podcast guesting is a tactic, right? Podcast interview marketing is a marketing channel. It's a strategy that says, here's what we're trying to do, right? Whenever we talk with clients, the first thing we ask is, what's the goal, right? The goal is not just another podcast interview. What are you trying to accomplish with this? So with the strategy, you have a goal. You've got a target of who you want to talk to. You've got a thought through process of what you want to talk about, right? Just not a random conversation, but something that's going to help people and move them along to solving their problem and your problem, right? It's also about a marketing channel to make it effective and efficient. So you don't want to just do more, more, and more, right? Um, I remember somebody came to us and said, I want to be on 100 interviews this month. And I'm like, why? Oh, because that will be massive exposure. I'm like, massive exposure does not grow a business, right? If that's the case, I don't know, go streaking. That's massive exposure, but I don't think that's the kind of stuff that's going to grow your business. So being very thoughtful on it and making sure that every interview moves the needle, right? You should get results from every interview. And while a lot of people in our industry are saying do more interviews, right? We're telling people do more with your interviews, right? Often we'll tell people we don't advise them to do less than a couple interviews a month, right? Because our clients have told us when they do less than two a month, they never get comfortable with it. But also, we don't tell people, we don't advise you normally to do more than one a week, right? And people say, well, if one a week is good, let's do one a day. No, no, more is not better. Better is better. And, if you want results from podcast interview marketing, a big part of that is repurposing the content, promoting the content, making great standalone interviews, not just Groundhog's Day. So with all of those, I would ask people when they say podcast guesting doesn't work, I start asking them questions like, well, what are your calls to action? What are your 3 calls to action? And they're like, well, what do you mean? Well, this has been proven over 10 years, right? 3 calls to action always convert best. Where do you send the people afterwards? Sending them to one dedicated welcome page is the only way you'll ever can be able to attribute where it's going. I'll ask them how they target it. What data do they use? And if you don't have all those answers, well, it's more of a hobby of podcast guesting than really a marketing channel.
I feel like strategy is a huge key that a lot of people are missing. Um, I love learning all about podcast interview marketing. I always love hearing you talk about it. Do you have any final thoughts for our listeners today?
Yeah, I guess the one that I would touch on, and we go back to mission a lot in our company, right? And I'll never forget. My mom asked me what I told her what our mission of our company was, and I said our mission is to personally introduce inspiring thought leaders to millions of people they could serve for the betterment of all. She looked and she says, "What's that have to do with podcast interviews?" Now, my mom, she listens to my podcast. I love her dearly, but she really doesn't understand podcasting. And it's not about podcasting, it's about connections, right? It's about driving value for everyone. Because at the end of the day, when people are talking there, nobody wants more leads, right? I think leads today are like Facebook likes. They're meaningless, right? I'd even say more, nobody wants more sales or more customers, right? What you want is more profits. And how do you get that? By delivering more value, by having clients that understand what you do, they value what you do. You bring them value and they're more than happy to give you profits with that. And I would say, if you're struggling with your marketing, right? I'd encourage you to listen to more of the podcast interview marketing show. Give it a chance, right? There's a lot of other people that are telling you break through the noise, yell louder, and you notice that they're all selling the megaphones that make us turn louder, right? I believe that we're not one funnel away, we're one conversation away. And if you've got a business that in your heart could help someone, I believe you've got the moral obligation to go out there and let them know. At least let them make the decision. And, if we can be of any service to you with that podcast interview marketing, that's what we do.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Tom.
Thank you, Jessica. So I hope you enjoyed that discussion and understood what podcast interview marketing is. It's a powerful new marketing channel, a new marketing category. But this information that you heard is useless if you don't take action on it. And so at the end of every podcast, we're going to give you 3 ways that you can take what you've learned and put it into action. So if you go back to podcastinterviewmarketing.com and find show 001, and we're going to have 3 resources for you. The first one is an assessment. Will podcast interview marketing work for me? It's 10 questions. We'll give you a score. We'll give you some ideas on how you could leverage this or even leverage it better. The second one is a copy of my book, Podcast Guest Profits: How to Grow Your Business with the Targeted Interview Strategy. It's been called the Bible of Podcast Guesting. It's really a playbook that shows you exactly how we do this, right? It's not magic. It's not a secret. It is a process that we do with excellence. And finally, if this resonated with you, if you wanted to talk with someone on our team or myself, go back there to podcastinterviewmarketing.com, find episode 001. I'll put all my social media links, and there'll be a link there to talk with our team about how you could use podcast interview marketing to grow your brand and grow your business. I want to leave you with one final thought. It comes from Rand Fishkin. Rand started a company called SEO Moz and then Spark Toro. He also wrote a great book called Lost and Founder. This was a tweet, and it's the best tweet I have ever read. He says, the best way to sell something today is not to sell anything, but to earn the respect, awareness, and trust of those who are ready to buy.